Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome live to Lime Rock Park for the final round of the 2012 iRacing Grand Am Premier Series. We're going to go straight ahead and run through your grid for this race before we get going. We'll start with the top 10 in the Daytona prototypes. It is Anthony Rosselli leading the way with a time of 44.614, with Kitty Armstrong in second position, lining up alongside him in row number 1. Adrius Valentius and Jason Dunnington will line up in row number 2, with Scott Ford and Phil Jocelyn in row 3. Sergei Solotov and Jean-Marc Bruni in row number 4, with Ali Bakhteri and Wolfgang Waldehar in the 5th row. The rest of your Daytona prototype field coming up on your screen momentarily. And then the Ford Mustangs, it is Nick Brennan leading the way from Roman Lizanev, and then Patrick Bieri, Carl Young, Chris Brown, Chuck Johnson, Tom Kochwe, and rounding out your field will be Thibault Benejek. We say we'll be racing here today for 90 minutes, 1.5 hours, and you can see just on the pace lap already just how narrow this track is. It is pretty much just 3 car lengths wide the entire way around, and the first section of this racetrack is where these prototypes want to get most of their passing done. As soon as you come out of turn number 4 all the way for the rest of the lap, you do not want to be stuck behind a slower car, otherwise it can cost you an absolute ton of time. You can see the pace car there coming through turn number 7, the downhill bend. He'll make that turn down towards pit road, and for the final time this season here on GlacierTV, you can see the pace car doing now the last round of the Grand Am Premier Series with Anthony Rosselli is green. You saw the field got stacked up there. You've got a car going 3 wide on the outside. That is Ali Bakhteri down into turn number 1. Very, very bold manoeuvre for him there. And you can just see how he's moving himself up into the 5th position. But Phil Jocelyn is on the attack at the moment. That is Scott Ford and the number 12 machine, who's trying to get back the positions he lost at the start of this race. Mercifully, everyone is through turn number 1 and 2 okay. In fact, I take that back. Looks as though Fabrizio Raffia was a bit slow. I think he did start that race from pit road, however, so he's not going to have to get himself around all of these Ford Mustangs. However, Anthony Rosselli in the number 1 machine is coming out of turn number 7 for the first time already to put his first lap in the book, and it is going to be Rosselli from Kitty Armstrong in second position, and Andreas Valentius in 3rd, Jason Dunnington in 4th, and Ali Bakhteri in 5th. Apologies for the timing going wrong just a little bit there momentarily. But for the time being, everyone's got themselves settled down. But these DP drivers especially know it is going to be in about 6 or 7 laps time when things really start getting crazy, as they're going to work themselves around this Mustang traffic. Getting once again on Phil Jocelyn in the number 7 machine. He's managed to kind of get that gap up between himself and Scott Ford now to about half a second. And if we look back into the Mustang class, it looks as though Brennan's had a really good start, being able to open up a little bit of a gap over Patrick Bieri, who gained himself a position on the start to Roman Lizanev. He's dropped right back in the number 17 machine to 6 seconds off the pace already in that first lap. So Lizanev has had a very bad first lap. Just checking in with Chris Brown momentarily, and he is trying to close the gap on the cars around him. Carl Young is the driver in the 3rd position, who Chris Brown is trying to make some form of progress on. This car and the Mustang would come down past start finish line once again. We have one car set on pit road. That is Antonio Acadinano in the number 13 machine. He looks as though to be our first casualty of the day, and it happened as he came into turn number 5, the uphill bend, just as the car comes up the hill. As it gets light, the car just speared to the right hand side straight into the tyre barriers. He's got himself substantial right side bodywork damage, and he looks as though his day could well be done. And now you can see, checking in on Anthony Rosselli once again in the number 1 machine. He is already now trying to work his way around this Mustang traffic there. And the first Mustang driver didn't see that he was coming. That was Tom Kochwe. And you see just Rosselli's having to dive down the inside. 1, 2, 3. now slowed dramatically in the final corner there to ensure he didn't run over Carl Young in the number 15 machine. Rosselli there, he was the lucky one. He was able to get those cars done pretty much in the space of 2 corners. The drivers behind, however, Kitty Armstrong, looks like he was able to do the same. But now Jason Dunnington, if he doesn't start clearing these drivers, he's going to get them in the slow section of this racetrack. And although it's a safer place to pass, it is substantially slower. And you see there, Dunnington trying to work his way through traffic. He's got one more of them to go. He should get this here as they come up the no-name straight down into turn number 5. But this is where things really start getting crazy. You see Chris Brown there getting right out of the way. Sergei Solotov, as he comes up the hill, he is just gone past a little bit of this traffic. And Scott Ford there catching a Mustang at the worst possible place down into turn number 6, the West Bend. Had to get right out of the throttle, and that allowed Andreas Valencius to just close up a little bit down into the final corner at number 7. And he's got himself a nice run as they come back down into turn number 1, the Big Bend, turns number 1 and 2 of this racetrack. The action here is so fast, so quick. We're talking about in the DP, so car in the wall, that is Bill Bailey. Bill Bailey is in the wall there, and just having a look to see what happened to him. He was riding the 14th position, but that was coming out of the final corner, and they could just clip the white line there. The car just speared right, tried saving it, nothing he could do. His day, again, looks like it could be done, bringing a damaged car back down towards pit road. See the replay of that for Bill Bailey on your screens momentarily. Meanwhile, we've got a great battle here going on now between Andreas Valencius and Scott Ford. This is the battle for 5th and 6th position on the racetrack. And you just saw there on the replay, just the slightest touch of the white line or getting onto the grass, and your car really can head off in a direction that you do not want it to. Valencius is doing a good job though, trying to close down Scott Ford. You saw how Ford is able to get a little bit of a gap in those first couple of laps. It has been clawed right back down again, but passing is so difficult here that you really have to time your maneuver to perfection. And a little bit of bump drafting now actually down into turn number 7. Valencius is getting very close to the rear of Scott Ford in the number 12 machine. And you see, well, to run through your top 5 in each of the classes momentarily, it is Anthony Rosselli in the number 1 machine leading the way in the Daytona prototype. Says, sorry, Scott Ford had just lost the position by the look of it to Valencius, trying to get it back as Valencius is getting very loose on the exit of turn number 4. But there is a big gap of cars ahead of him with 2 Mustangs going side by side, and you just see how much slower there the DP drivers have to go. As the Mustangs go by side, there is absolutely nowhere for the DP drivers to go, and all of a sudden Ford and Valencius lost themselves about 4 seconds in quick succession there. Their last lap time was a 46.660. As they crossed the line, a 50.686. They lost themselves 4 seconds in just a matter of half a straightaway. As now Ford goes wide into turn number 1, he's going to lose himself even more time and put himself under pressure from Jean-Marc Bruni, who goes past, as does Sergei Solotov, and just keeping ahead of Ali Bakhteri in the number 20 machine. So if I take a very deep breath, try and get this done as quickly as possible, is Anthony Rosselli from Kitty Armstrong, Jason Dunnington, Phil Jocelyn, and Andreas Valencius in the DP class, your top 5. In the Mustang division, it is Nick Brennan from Patrick Berry, Carl Young, Chuck Johnson, and Chris Brown rounding out your top 5. Going to check in with the Mustang class momentarily. In fact, we'll check in with your race leader, Nick Brennan, who for the time being looks as though he's opened himself up a rather steady gap in that number 6 machine. The gap between himself and Patrick Bieri is, in fact, I'll take that back. The gap between himself and Patrick Bieri is about 4 seconds on the racetrack. Bieri can still see that number 6 machine, but it is getting further and further away. And this separation is what the DP drivers is going to want to see for the most part, rather than taking 4 or 5 drivers at once. If they can just try and take one of them at a time, even if it is literally going to be 1 per corner, it's a lot easier than trying to get through a whole gaggle of them all at once. It really does put drivers off momentum. Don't forget, you can keep in touch with us all afternoon on Twitter. Use the hashtag IRGlacier. That is IRGlacier if you'd like to give your thoughts on this race. We're going to take a deep breath and be back in about 30 seconds time. Checking in momentarily on the battle for the 3rd and 4th position in the Mustang class. That is Carl Young, the number 15 machine, and Chuck Johnson in the number 9. These two drivers are separated by about 2.5 seconds on the racetrack, and in turn, they're a further 2.5 seconds back from the number 14 car of Patrick Bieri. But having a look at the lap times of Johnson, in particular, his last lap was a full second slower than that of Carl Young, so he's starting to lose out a little bit there. Seacross is aligned once again to put his 9th lap in the books. He does a 1 minute .4. Compare that to Carl Young in the 1 minute .2s. So Johnson losing out a little bit in the early going of this race, but still keeping in contact with Young and Bieri. In fact, Bieri's lost himself a good 1.5 seconds in just the last lap or bit. So Young is now right on the rear of that number 14 machine, and this is in turn allowing Nick P. Brennan to get away in that class lead in number 6 machine. So John say he's not, as this field bunches together, these Mustangs, they'll bunch back together. As Bieri and Young start racing for position, you'll see how Johnson gets back into the picture. Clean air is worth so much in this car that once you get to a point that, you know, you're in that dirty air zone, your lap times will fall off dramatically. Well, I wouldn't say dramatically, by about 1/10, 2/10 of a second a lap. And that can allow other drivers, you see that big traffic jam down into turn number 1. In fact, you just saw that was Kitty Armstrong in the 2nd position in the Daytona Prototype class getting past, but Matthew Burrows really struggling to find his way through those 3 Mustang drivers. So really are struggling for the time being is Matthew Burrows, and he's all the way down in the 12th position at the moment. Already he's classified as 1 lap down, as we have 11 drivers in the Daytona Prototype field on the lead lap, 3 drivers 1 lap down. And of course, already all of the Mustang drivers are laps down, but they're not racing the DP drivers, they are only racing themselves. And we'll check in back in that battle between Phil Jocelyn and Andreas Villagers, as it just there, a little bit of contact coming out of turn at number 7. Bit of perhaps mistiming, miscommunication with the Mustang drivers. I don't think that Valencius was realising that that was going to happen with with Phil Jocelyn having to come back down to the middle of the racetrack. This is just giving a little bit of damage to both of those cars. Valencius took a short trip on the grass, but was able to get back on track there. That was Valencius in the number 2 car, just coming out the final corner. We'll try and get ourselves a replay of that. Onto the grass there, managed to get it straight back onto the track, but very close call there for both Valencius and Phil Jocelyn in the number 2 and number 7 machines, respectively. It is still Andrew Selly, your race leader in the DP field, with Kitty Armstrong in the 2nd position, 3.1 seconds behind. And we've seen how Maselli has had some great drives here in the Grand Am Premier Series on iRacing. He really has been one of those strong contenders we have seen throughout this season. Dunnington, you know, he's also been a really good driver in that number 4 machine, and I think next year expect to see big things from him. But in that last lap alone, so Dunnington in that number 4 car, just losing out a little bit in the traffic. In fact, he lost 3 seconds over Anthony Rosselli's. He comes back past the start-finish line. You can just see the difference. That last time by a 46.645, the lap previous, a 48.394. And it seems as though Donington really is struggling in traffic. Just a lot of it, he's losing out just where he catches this traffic more than anything else here at all. At this time, I would like to bring in my good friend, Mr. Doyle Johnson. Hello, Mr. Doyle Johnson.
Hello, Mr. Vincent. How's everybody today? Sounds like an exciting race.
Yeah, it is, and so we're about now 15. Oh, sorry, Rosselli off track there. That is down in turn number 1. Anthony Rosselli looks like he's out of bounds as well. Do not know what happened to him there. We'll get ourselves a replay of that momentarily. But Anthony Rosselli coming down into turn number 1 just looks as though he got that car a little bit wide on the apex. The car spun around on him, and Anthony Rosselli looks as though he is out of the race. And Doyle, we have talked about Rosselli so often in this series. We have seen some superb performances, but I mean, if you remember back to Indianapolis when he was on his roof at one point and came back to finish, what, second in that race?
Yeah, he's had a lot of remarkable comebacks on these roads. So it's not a question if he can get things under control, he might get out on the track. But yeah, he's been very lucky many times. He's got a really good pit crew and obviously a no-quit attitude.
It did look as though he just stalled the engine on that number 1 machine, because there's no damage that I can see at all. Just looks as though he was forced to take a tow back down toward pit road. That's, however, a track this short going to put him, what, 2 laps down? Even if he takes his pit stop now, and this is what we saw at Indy, he'd been going off strategy. Even if he does take this moment for his pit stop, he's still going to have to find, 40-45 seconds from out of nowhere. So
yeah, I'm sorry, I was looking at something else. Well, sorry about that.
No worries. So we'll just check in now on again this battle between Phil Jocelyn and Andreas Valentius is really hotting up now, as Jocelyn is trying to find a way back into some form of contention here. But you get onto, from about turn 4 all the way down towards the end of the lap, it is just so fast. You've got just a little bit of gravel smoke coming out there on the exit of turn number 7, but those last couple of corners really are fast, and Jocelyn seems as though he can really manhandle that car. But Andreas Valentius ahead of him, he's now gained 4 seconds over Jocelyn in that number 7 machine. And Doyle, we have seen that you can really lose a lot, one gain a lot in traffic here. You don't really gain much in traffic at all. You can perhaps put a second or so over another driver by good car placement, but it's very easy to lose a lot of time here. As again, Phil Jocelyn having to get right out of the throttle in that number 7 machine, which is costing him, second and a half, when you consider just how fast turn number 5 is.
Yeah, and on this race course here, this is one of those tracks more about finesse and consistency than anything else, because a lot of the corners, they're not really that tight. There's really that only one real tight section. All the other corners are at fairly high speed. You've got turn 1 that can be extremely tricky here. But consistency is the name of the game. If you're gonna, you can lose a lot of time on every lap just by being inconsistent in the corners.
And one of the things that you will see is that these drivers will get very frustrated towards the end of the race. The only thing they want from the drivers around them is some form of consistency of when to overtake, especially in the other class. And if you're in the Mustang point of things, because let's not forget, it's as hard for the Mustangs as it is for the, in fact, it's probably harder for the Mustang drivers. They want consistency. They know where each individual driver is going to try and make that move lap after lap after lap. For the Daytona prototype drivers, as I believe Wolfgang Wildenhall there had a slow down penalty in his number 16 machine. But for the DP drivers, they need to make sure that the Mustangs do the same thing lap after lap. And the closing speeds that you get in these cars and the speed of these corners, Doyle, it really does mean that you've got to pay attention to each individual driver's car placement and hope that that remains static.
Yeah, and on this race course too, it's very line specific to get speed. There really is there's not a lot of forgiveness on what lanes you can run in order to maintain speed. I'm watching up front here, Brennan.
Oh, sorry, I need
And,
to over to big crash on the racetrack there. That is
oh,
Fabrizio Raffa and Chris Brown. And it just looked as though that was a moment started by Fabrizio Raffa all by himself, trying to go around the outside of Brown in the Mustang. And just the car spears left and just throws Brown onto his roof. How Scott Ford was able to get past that, I have no idea, because it happened right in front of him. I'm just thinking if there's any damage to the front of Scott Ford's car, and indeed I don't think there is. So Scott Ford, Doyle, is one lucky man.
well, yeah, and then you got Chris Brown, who's got a bit of damage to his vehicle. He hit that the barrier there pretty hard. So on the track, he's got to get that thing into the pits and see if he can't get some repairs.
Indeed.
But this is, oh, geez. Yeah, and look at that replay. You can see this is one of the things about this track that's very tricky. You have to stay on track. There isn't a lot of forgiveness to being on the rumble strips or being on the curb on the side, because it will absolutely throw you into the grass, and that's what you saw right there.
Yeah, and in many ways, it's the complete opposite in what it does to you, but the same principles as Mosport. At Mosport, you go off the track and you're not going to spin, you're just going to go in a straight line for about 14 years and an eternity. But here, if you get offline and you try to turn the car, it's just going to snap and you're going to go in the opposite direction to where you want it to be going. You see Scott Ford there in the number 12 car. He's just overtaken 3 Mustangs, I think, in the space of 2 corners. And of course, that means we do need to check in on our Mustang field, because we currently have Nick Brennan, who's got a bit of a buffer there with Tom Kotrowski in the number 24 machine, who's currently scored as a lap down, 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, in 6th position in class. But then you've got Patrick Biari now trying desperately to get past. Not really being able to make the move as he tries into the final corner. He should be able to now. But then, right again, he's got a DP driver just flying past him. So now Biari's still in the 2nd position, but that gap's kind of opened back up again to Brennan after they'd been able to get it down to about 2.5, 3 seconds. But if you have a look, though, a lot of the Mustangs are close right back up to where they were at the start of this race. And at one point now, we had about 5 of them in the space of 3-4 seconds.
Well, yeah, and on this track here, you're probably not going to see the gap that you see at, some of those infield tracks like Daytona or any of those, just because of the track. Now, unfortunately, I'm watching the Mustangs here, and it's as suspected. There's very few times, because of the DP traffic coming up the track. The course is so short, you're constantly under attack by the DPs. So the Mustangs probably will be lucky to run 10 clean laps here, running their line. I mean, if you see they're being pushed into the grass, I mean, this is a perfect example. Look at Brennan, the car in front of him, just pushed into the grass, being pushed to the side, pushed to the left, pushed to the right. They can't even get a lap in here, so that's got to be very, very frustrating for them.
Indeed, and one of the things I noticed as well there, Doyle, is that trying to time an overtaking manoeuvre, normally, it takes a lot of time and patience and attention. When you've got cars closing you down about 30 miles an hour faster than you, you've really got to make that pass quick and make it stick, and think about the fact where you're going to be come the exit of the corner. And you saw there a couple of laps back just how really you had to be on it to have the chance to try and make the pass. I'm just having a look. Biari's on pit road. I'm just checking to see if this is for a scheduled pit stop. It does look as though he is doing the early pit stop there, but he's been sat in pit road for quite a while now. No damage. I can see a little bit of front side damage, but nothing too substantial. I'm trying to get an update on that from our guys down in pit road momentarily. But yeah, he went a little bit wide, but he got a little bit of contact, I think, from one of the Daytona prototype drivers coming down into turn number 2. Just a little bit. Ah, there we are. It was Bill Bailey there. Not to be confused with the other Bill Bailey, of course. Down into turn number 1. pushed the 14 car off wide a little bit, but Doyle wasn't too much damage to the number 14 machine. He should be able to get back out onto the track, and it looks as though he's just kind of altered his strategy to suit.
Yeah, and that's, you know, what you have to do. He's probably got a little bit of damage. It may be affecting the handling of the car a little, so he's just going to kill him. But again, once again, out here, depending on what car you're driving, top speed may not even be important at all because you're constantly under attack. So, again, it's just consistency of line and trying to get as many corners as you can in the right line. Otherwise, you know, it's, you know, you're just kind of back to stay on the track, which is what I'm seeing a lot of here.
So it is Kitty Armstrong, your race leader, from Andreas Valengius in the second position. Phil Jocelyn in third, Scott Ford fourth, Sergei Solotov in fifth in your DP class. And in your Mustang division, it is Nick Brennan, Chuck Johnson, Carl Young, Tom Kotowski, and Roman Lizanov. We're going to step aside for a moment, and we're going to go on board with your race leader in a DP class, Kitty Armstrong. We're on board with him now.
Yeah, if you look at that, Will, real quick, you look at how the Mustangs are having to alter their line. Look at Kitty go when he comes around. They're checking it out, so he's got to go inside here. The Mustang gets the preferred line. So it's kind of give and take. Most of the time, the DPs are actually giving respect on the track, and it's kind of an interesting race here. It feels like the Mustangs are kind of rolling chicanes, if you would, for the DP racers.
I mean, we'll do it at the line next time Sean plays cars. We'll see what his top speed is. We'll compare that to Nick Brennan's top speed, fastest of the fast in the Mustang division. And you can just see what that top speed differential is. But it's not just the top speed that's the issue. The acceleration coming off the corners. I mean, when you consider just how heavy these Mustangs are compared to the race-tuned, you know, craziness of the Daytona prototypes with all of its great horsepower, you know, it's like talking about walking or driving a Formula 1 car.
Yeah, it's the difference between night and day. I mean, the Mustang, obviously, a road. It's it's normally a street car, but it's been adapted to be a road race car. And usually a track like this or Laguna Seca or tracks like that, it's usually when you'll see the Mustang excel. But then you put them in the same arena with a car with the DP that's, you know, mostly about downforce instead of mechanical grip, and, you know, they're built for speed, low to the ground, aerodynamically sound. Even though the Mustangs actually have more horsepower, there's just no aerodynamics in the setup of the car. It makes the DP so much faster on these kinds of courses.
I'm just having a look now on board with Nick Brennan, and you just see how much he's having to work that weight. It's almost like, you know, he's having to drive one of the NASCAR. I compare it often to the Nationwide Series car, just how heavy the steering is and how much you really have to turn the wheel. But at the same time, it's a smooth movement. You don't see these cars, you know, just jerking to the right. It's a smooth in, smooth out. But you need to use a bit of force to get there.
Well, and there's a lot of braking involved. As you watch, you expect a lot of braking into turn one, but if you look, the last couple of turns, there's braking going on for the Mustang. Places where you will not see braking, maybe just a slight lift from the DP to get around, but the Mustang's braking everywhere. And you saw right there on his line how he had to move around, take the wide line. Well, obviously that cost him a ton of time because he had to move out of his normal line, the line that he should be running, to make way for the DP. So Mustang drivers right now are really in challenge. You can see the brake. If you're inside the car there, you're looking at the roll. And if you pull back a little bit, you can definitely see a lot of braking going on in the Mustangs.
And while all this happened, Chuck Johnson, the number 9 machine, has kind of closed that gap a little bit. So Johnson, he looks like that car works well in traffic and can really adapt to running that car anywhere on the racetrack. And you see, he can actually now see his competitor Brennan rather than being about a corner away, and that's really going to drive Johnson on a little bit. Doyle. Just how he's you know, he can see him there, he can see he's struggling in traffic, he's going to go for it.
Well, and that's just part of it too, and why, you know, it goes to what you said earlier about the cars. It's kind of to be bunching up again is the luck of the draw. How much of the racetrack can you get without DP traffic to run your line? So if Johnson can get more, actual good line time, he's going to catch right up to Nick Brennan, who is actually getting attacked by DPs. So it's really a luck of the draw. So now Chuck Johnson needing to alter his line, so he's starting to lose time again. It's a give and take. It's like an accordion effect, depending on how much track you get into.
Oh yeah. And Bill Bailey has unfortunately returned, which means that I don't have to put myself in a position where I don't have to make any comedy jokes, which is good. It is still Kitty Armstrong leading the way. We are going to check in momentarily, though, if this is going to be possible. We're going to check in on Anthony Rosselli. Currently scored 1 lap down in the 8th position. Rosselli is absolutely charging at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm expecting before this race is over that Rosselli's definitely going to make up some time. He is absolutely up on the wheel at this point.
I mean, let's compare his lap. That last lap was to 47.485, a little bit slower than what he's done so far in this run. But his time, previous, 45.701. Only a couple of attempts slower than his fastest lap of the race. He's trying to get down the inside there.
Looking inside.
And Gronic is having
this is not
nothing
a good place
of
to look
that.
inside.
Well, you see, he's got
line. Very good.
And he's boxing. There we are. He's boxing Gronic in, and that.
Oh, there you go.
That actually really strategically done. You can see the
car
ahead
of you. That was a great pass.
And I know Gronic wasn't very happy about that, but if you can see that, you have a slower car ahead of you, then you don't have to full single file. What Rosselli did there is that, okay, I'm going to take the inside line. I could win this one, and I could get the line I need into the next corner. Or it could go the other way, and you could then get a 3-4 second gap over me. And you just saw that Rosselli is already off into the sunset, all caused by just one corner.
Yeah, and like you say, anything that comes out of it, that was a really great move by Anthony Rosselli to notice that the Mustang was up there. He was going to have to stay to the right, so he actually did box in his competitor. As he come around the turn, he gave him nowhere to go. Steve Groening was nothing. There was nothing he could do. So Steve Rosselli gets the line. So
although he still gave him at least a car width even, so he didn't force him off track or anything. But
no.
Strategic place, and on the track this narrow, that can almost be a bigger part of racing as the trying to overtake people in itself. And because of the fact that there is such a big speed differential, you might see this towards the end of the race. Someone makes a big bold move down the inside, it could all go their wrong way if around the next corner is a Mustang which is deciding, actually I'm going to stay on this side of the racetrack. Because the Mustang doesn't have side where they want to be, and so long as they take a line and they keep it consistent, there shouldn't be any issues. And you notice though that most of the Mustangs will run the outside line for most corners. I've seen turn number 1 a couple of drivers saying, well, you guys can go around the long way because it's a lot more scary for me in a Mustang to try and take turn 1 and 2 wide in case they get into that grass. But you notice that, for the most part, all of these Mustang drivers are holding a very similar line on, and that's going to be of a little bit of comfort to the prototype drivers.
Yeah, and I think these guys have raced together quite a bit, so you get a lot of respect, and they kind of know the drivers, and they're used to riding together. This particular track obviously has its own set of challenges, but because of the fact that it's a much shorter track than we're normally used to seeing on this circuit, so you still get these long straightaways, but it's definitely a big challenge. And like I say, that line that you're talking about with the Mustangs, as a Mustang driver, that is actually not the preferred line, but probably the safe in a situation like you see in the race today.
Oh yeah, just to give you an update, Andreas Valencia is in the number 2 machine. His day is done. He was the second of our drivers to become a little bit too friendly with turn number 5. So his race is over, and we are just past the half an hour mark here in the final round of the iRacing Grand Am Premier Series, brought to you all season long by GlacierTV. Anthony Rosselli, we're going to keep back on with him He is currently in the 7th position now, and he'll move up into 6th before this lap is done. In fact, he has just done so now. Ali Bakhtiri is his next victim in the number 20 machine, but of note, there are only 3 drivers at the moment on the lead lap. Only 3 drivers on the lead lap, and just having a look to see where Solotov is compared to Scott Ford, and he is about 10 seconds behind. So really, this field is getting very, very spread out, for the most part, out front in the VP class, except for Phil Jocelyn and Scott Ford. That battle continues. They are 37 seconds behind the race lead, but less than 1 second apart from themselves. So this Phil Jocelyn and Scott Ford battle, we're going to switch back to that for the time being. You can just see how Ford is hounding Jocelyn for all it is worth. Don't forget, Jocelyn's got himself a little bit of damage from earlier contact with Valentius. This was about 10 laps into this race, but Scott Ford really is charging as we're approaching this midway point in this race. And Doyle, Scott Ford and Phil Jocelyn really is heating up at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely coming up to the front. Once again, he's really settled into the track, so he's got that line. He's picking up a lot of speed. He doesn't seem to be making a lot of mistakes on there, so really making up some time right now.
And the only issue for Anthony Rosselli is, I've just checked in on him again, that he is a lap and a half behind.
Oh, big bin on the front right there. Car up
Indeed,
on the roof.
Chuck Johnson, who was having such a good day. I believe that was a car on the outside of him in the final corner. No, I take that back. It was Antonio Accadono who literally just tried to bump drive. He just hit him in the final corner and spun that car around. Now it looks like oh, sorry, I take that back. And then Jocelyn, not Jocelyn. It was, yeah, again. He got hit a second time by the look of it. Just trying to see who that was. But Chuck Johnson there, really, his day is done. And it was indeed Phil Jocelyn.
Was Antonio our Diaciano actually hit him in the butt in the rear to start with. Came right down off the turn and just right into the back end. Hit maneuver. His back end loose. He went around him as he was spinning. Bad luck for Chuck Johnson, because here comes Phil Jocelyn. Couldn't get out of the way. He smashes into it, turns him on his roof, and poor Chuck Johnson. That was just that. He had absolutely no way to avoid that at all. Not a happy camper.
So sorry about that, a couple of my issues there. So it was Phil Jocelyn who was involved. Oh, shut up, Doyle. Phil Jocelyn was the second driver involved there, who just had nowhere to go coming out the final corner. But really, there's nothing that either Jocelyn or Johnson could have had any fault attached to them at all. It was just simply Antonio Accadono just literally just bumped Chuck Johnson into the final corner for pretty much no reason at all. And that caused a big chain reaction.
Very poor drive by Antonio. And that was just very poor driving on his part and cost another driver. I'm sure there's going to be words and pits over that particular incident between Chuck Johnson and Antonio, well, yeah, for sure.
Indeed, and we saw how excited Johnson was coming into this race. He's going to have to really sit back and do all the math, seeing these where he's likely to filter in for the final championship standings. Scott Ford, he's going to move up into a solid second position now, but that's not going to be the way he wanted it. He's having a great scrap with Jocelyn in the battle for that second position. Thirdly, Solotov will move up into third in the DP class, and look who's all of a sudden back up into fourth place. Anthony Rosselli, even though he's a lap down.
He's been charging. He's a lap down. He's going to... There's probably not much else he can do depending on what happens. I don't think he can get his lap back here, because unlike ovals, obviously it's consistent. There's no cautions to help you out. There's no wave arounds. So, but coming back from where he was to get all the way up to be, fourth place, and I wonder if he's going to mount a charge on Sergey Soldatov there for third place. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, it's going to be very close. I think that Rosselli is in a bad mood. The same way we saw him at a bad mood at Indy. We've seen him at a bad mood often, in the season. And when he is in a bad mood, he just charges that car around the racetrack like I don't see other drivers really doing. So I think he's still got a shot for at least third position. And of course, you can just tell that a gap's closing around you. Even if you're a lap ahead, you're still going to have to make a pit stop, and all of a sudden, you mess up your pit stop, get yourself a speeding penalty, and he's right back in it.
Oh, absolutely. So, that's just a testament to what a great driver he is. I mean, we've seen this many, many times before. So, Anthony Rosselli is definitely not out of it, and he's gaining on third place. So, we've got quite a bit of races here, so it should be pretty good.
Indeed, so we'll run through very quickly your top 5 in each class. It is Kitty Armstrong leading the way from Scott Ford in the second position with Sergei Soldatov in third. Anthony Rosselli in the fourth position with Ali Bakhtiri in the fifth spot. They are all, of course, your Daytona Post-Track drivers. And then over to the Mustang division, it is Nick Brennan in first with Carl Young in second, Tom Kochki in third, Patrick Bieri in fourth, and Roman Luzanov in the fifth position. I have to say, though, from nowhere, Nick Brennan's opened up a 15-second lead. So we saw how good Johnson was at closing down Brennan. Now Johnson's pretty much out of the race. It is pretty much Brennan's race to lose from here on in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when Chuck Johnson had that unfortunate incident, that kind of probably let Nick Brennan breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. When his pit crew called out and said Johnson was out of the race, it's probably a big sigh there. Now he's like, all right, pressure's off. I can just drive my race. I don't have anybody behind me. So if he can continue to run like we said earlier, that consistent line, just keep running, you're right. It's his race to lose. Just get to the end, get it done.
And of course, coming into this race, we'll just jump into the championship standings momentarily. I mean, it is pretty much Anthony Rosselli's championship to lose. It's almost impossible for him to lose this championship mathematically. I mean, he has a 300-point pretty much advantage over João Pinot in second. Not really anything anyone can do from there on in. Kitty Armstrong, however, he's got a fight from behind. From Glenn Tidman and perhaps Andy Kursoff still to happen here today. That needs to sort itself out. So Kitty really needs this race win to guarantee himself fourth place in the championship. Doesn't look as though he will catch Blake Townend in third, however. So, I mean, on the DP side of things, there's not a lot in the top 10 that really can happen for the time being. But Chuck Johnson is going to be hugely disappointed because he wanted to move his way up into the top 10. And he would have had the chance to do that, but at the moment it's going to be touch and go between himself and Edmund Friedman as who's going to get the 10th spot.
Yeah, we've seen Chuck Johnson before. I mean, he's been involved in some pretty epic battles during the season, so it's unfortunate for him, and I'm sure he's pretty disappointed. But again, that just gives Nick Brennan that much to go for, and meanwhile, too, up at the front here, I'm kind of taking a look at, Will, what would you be doing? I'm pretty sure that Sergei's pit crew is yelling at him, telling him that Rosselli is coming, Rosselli coming. So what would you do at this point in the race? Because Rosselli is absolutely coming.
I'd run my own race, simple as that. At age, Sergei's lap times have pretty much been static since that lap 4. They've been in that kind of same window, so not as if there's much more speed that can be found in that car. The only way you'd go faster is if you were to come into pit road and get some fresh tyres, but that would only last you for about 2-3 laps. Solotov's just going to have to continue running his race to keep that momentum going and hope that Rosselli either has issues behind or and he maybe to consolidate that position elsewhere.
Well, and you know how it is. Once you get, you're okay. You're hanging in there, third place. You're a lap down, so you're kind of, you are where you are, and you want to hold on as many places as you can. But then when you have somebody like you said, Anthony Rosselli, bad mood. He wants his places back. He wants as many as he can. And like I say, right now he's having the wheels off TP. and I believe he's closed the gap to where he's actually has Sergey visible. So that probably will make it even more of a charge.
Oh yeah, the gap they came across the line last time by was about 3 seconds between Anthony Rosselli and Sergey Solotov. In fact, that closed a little bit more as they came down to turn 1. It is now about 2 seconds, and Rosselli there making a big bold maneuver down to the inside. Oh, William Green needing to get that pass completed, and pretty much it's going to be game over before we even know it. I mean, both got around the Mustang traffic easily, and you know they've got a big gaggle of cars ahead of them. Thibault and Bienjek is probably going to be caught before the end of this lap, but Solotov there, he's probably kept himself, you know, giving himself another couple of corners at least, because Rosselli won't be able to get past. In fact, what am I talking about? He has got. Oh, Rosselli there, all the way on the outside line there, and that was very close to the number 22 machine, who, can we just say that he's put a lap on in what, 20 laps? Doyle?
Yeah, that's pretty impressive at this point. I mean, wow. You know, it just goes to show how much drivers are wanted. I mean, they're really out there running the heck out of this track today, and this is also a very fun track because, like I say, it doesn't. There's not a lot of corners. It's very short, easy to, you know, you have to remember as many corners, so you get into that groove where you really run, really push your car.
And I was just having a look at Solotov there. So I was having a look at something a little bit beforehand and trying to get a grip of things. But Solotov looks as though that car on the latter stage of the lap is actually really strong. It's just the first couple of corners is where he loses the majority of his time compared to the other drivers around him. And it just looks as though Solotov really, you know, if the entire lap was like the last bit, he would be fine. Jason Dunnington, however, his day continues to be from bad to worse. It looks as though he's had mechanical issues all race long, and they just keep on happening. He's been brought back down to pit road once again.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate for Jason Dunnington. I mean, he's scored 15 laps down according to my scoring here, and it not a good race for him today. I mean, we've seen him run a lot of. Not sure why. I mean, this track is just too simple for some people. It's just interesting because he's done well.
Sergey Solotov is down onto pit road. Tom Cotchery has had an engine blow up as well, so his day is not going well at the time being. So we are having a look to see Solotov is down on pit road. Wolfgang Waldenhorst is still down on pit road. Now scored 4 laps down. But we'll keep an eye out here to see how much time Solotov loses. Whether he loses another full lap, because this is going to be really the first indication of just how much time he can lose or gain. And it looks as though he was in his box about 21 seconds overall.
Yeah. Looking at some, it looks like somehow or another. Did you catch it?
Oh, sorry. Carl Young, the second driver in the Mustang division, spinning it around there. And he is going to have to try and reverse that thing back out into the racetrack. As Patrick Bieri there is just trying to, he's closed that gap now to less than 5 seconds. But carry on, Doyle.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you saw with the Mustang driver, and he's very fortunate to just end up with a spin and be able to get it back on the track, because turn 1 is notorious. Go too wide, get on the outside of turn 1, your car just fails to respond and you're into the grass. And once you're in the grass, good luck steering at all. I mean, you have to use the throttle to maybe point your car in another direction. So even though the turn doesn't look like much, turn 1 is one of the heaviest turns on this race course. Especially coming from that long front straight, you really have to get in the braking zone and get down to speed in order to take turn 1, keep from ending up in the tire barriers, you know, halfway down the farm field.
Oh yeah, and that's going to be one of the key things, you know, just making sure you keep that car inside the white line, pretty much at all times, but specifically in turn number 1, because as soon as you're outside, because it's such a long, the corner's got such long radii, you know, you just won't be able to get it back on course at all without finding a way of skipping pretty much the entirety of the infield section of this racetrack. Giddy Armstrong is still your race leader. Scott Ford is still sat in the second position. Scott Ford is a lap down now. So it is pretty
I
much
don't know
one
how that
driver
happened.
alone. No, it's just one driver alone. I mean, he was about 40 seconds behind, so he has, I mean, just placed a lap down on Kitty Armstrong, just for the fact that Armstrong is just having a great drive out front. And let's not forget, Armstrong, you know, he was a couple of tenths per second faster than most of the other drivers, with the exception of Rosling coming into this race. But Anthony Rosselli, you know, that gap is closing once again. It's only now down to about half a lap between Rosselli and Scott Ford. And we're only talking about 20 seconds there, so, you know, Rosselli could still get second.
Yeah, and he's, once again, charging pretty hard, but it's back and forth, like we said, you know, because if you get into traffic, you're going to slow down, but then, you know, when you're out of traffic, you're back up, because I've seen Scott Ford running, you know, 48 ones, and then at the same time, Anthony Rosselli running 48.3, and I'm watching it swap where Rosselli's running the 3 and Ford's running the 1, so it's going to be interesting to see if there's enough race left for Anthony Rosselli to kind of catch a glimpse of the back wing of Scott Ford. And now that they're both on the same lap, I bet you Anthony Rosselli's got yet more motivation to keep pushing that car.
Let's see, we're just keeping an eye out to see when Kitty Armstrong is likely to make that trip down to the pit road. Not many drivers have opted to take that journey just yet. And don't forget though, Doyle, Rosselli has got his pit stop, we think, pretty much over and done with. So, in theory, he should leapfrog Scott Ford at the end of this. I don't think though he's anywhere near close enough to try and catch Kitty though.
No, and he's not running the lap times that it's going to take to catch Kitty either. I mean, look at his lap times. You know, he's running 46.3s, and you figure Anthony Rosselli, his last lap was 46.7. Like I said, each lap is its own individual.
Well, yeah, of course.
But he'd have to be running a lot faster than this in order to have anything for Kitty Engstrom before the end of this race.
But Scott Ford looking as though that could still be a possibility.
It could be a possibility, and we've seen this 100 million times before, where, you know, you have somebody dominating the entire race, and, you know, in the last 10 laps of the race they slip, and, you know, next thing you know they're spinning down the straightaway into the tire barriers, and, you know, lights out. You never really count out any of the racers that are still on this racetrack, especially in the top 5, until, you know, the race is over.
We're just checking back in on your Mustang field momentarily, and really, it looks as though that Brennan is just in a class of his own. He's a full lap and a half, almost 2 laps ahead of Carl Young at the moment. The fastest lap of the race by a full second over pretty much anyone else on the racetrack. Brennan really is charging, and it looks as though the competition's just kind of fallen away from him ever since that moment with Chuck Johnson. It just hasn't really had any real challenges at all. And, you know, Patrick Bieri, Roman Luzanov were kind of there or thereabouts at the start of the race, but ever since Young has inherited that second lead, it looks as though, you know, that second place even, it looks as though things have just calmed down quite a little bit. And even though Young is on the Patrick Bieri close him down, for the moment, it looks as though Brannon's pretty much all by himself.
Yeah, and he's obviously scored 2 laps ahead of Kyle Young. Kyle Young's running very impressive lap times for the Mustang. He's actually in his last couple laps for quite a bit better than Nick Brennan, but you have to put together a lot of those laps, kind of gap, and two laps down for that to even matter at this point in time. So I wonder if Nick Brennan is just kind of trying to not push his car so hard. And I noticed in the last couple of laps he's made a few mistakes, and sometimes that happens. Well, you've seen that before, where somebody kind of tries to let up a little bit, and all of a sudden, you know, that's worse than if you know, they were under pressure.
Of course, yeah. I never make mistakes. I only ever witness them.
Of course not. Yeah. Of course, not getting on the racetrack usually keeps you from making any mistakes.
I will let you know. I've raced a lot this week. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Oh, you see there, Patrick Bieri. You just talked about turn 1 and 2 a little bit earlier. He's gone wide, and look at it. He's lost 2, 3, 4 seconds in a matter of moments there to Carl Young, and all that hard work he's done over the past 10 or 15 laps, he's going to have to do all over again.
Yeah, like I say, this race course is deceptively simple, but it's actually very unforgiving. I mean, you cannot be off the track and cannot be too wide in some of the corners. I mean, you've got to stay on this race course, and clipping off of the grass spin your car. So even though it's a very simple track, I mean, there's some elevation changes that can be pretty tricky. Not a lot of corners. It is not as forgiving as it looks.
I mean, this track is what, just a smidgen over 1.5 miles long. I mean, you and I both oval racers. 1.5 miles is our kind of standard territory. It's got 7 corners. I mean, some of the best racetracks in the world have only got a handful of corners. And think back to, for example, the A1 ring in Austria. That track, you know, I think only has 8 corners, but is incredibly demanding on the cars. And what you have here is a weird situation where the first couple of corners are very slow and technical. And then the rest is very, you know, literally you're flat out or close to the entire time. For the second half of the lap, I think you're on the throttle for like 80% of the time. And it just shows how you've almost built 2 racetracks in one. And the transitioning between those sections as well, you've got to be really on it in different ways whilst doing this all in less than a minute a lap.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is, you know, how do you set up your car? Do you set up your car for top speed? Do you set up your car for tight corners? And here you have to be almost kind of a neutral ground. You know, try to find the best of both worlds, or you set it up to be, hey, I'm going to be really fast and tight.
Oh my! Sorry to interrupt you there, Kitty Armstrong. Literally, there was inches apart. Hopefully, we'll get a Glacier Super Slow-Mo on this. Phil Jocelyn in the number 7 machine, down in turn number 1. They just caught the white line, trying to give Kitty Armstrong a little bit of a room. That number 7 machine, I am looking at it on my screen, and we are talking, Doyle, inches. In fact, we are talking the fact, has Jocelyn's car not have been damaged earlier, then, and not, the front wouldn't have been crumpled in a little bit, you know, Armstrong would have been out of this race. That is how close we're talking.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and he did actually. The front of his car did put a nice stripe down right down the door of Kitty Engstrom to get by there. But it's probably not going to affect the handling. But once again, if you do this, if we can get that super slow-mo, you can see what happens. You go too wide in turn 1.
Pit road. Hey, carry on.
And you can see his rear tire gets a little bit off the pavement into the dirt, and snap spin, and he loses control of his car. That's just, it just scrapes along the side of Angstrom's car, but of course Kitty's not going to let that stop him. He's moving on from there. But that's an unfortunate incident. That was almost a game changer.
So Kitty Armstrong into pit road in his car, back out again. No, still there for the time being. And also Ali Bacteri is down on pit road. Bacteri is currently sat down in the 7th position in his number 20 machine. Armstrong back onto the track, Bacteri onto pit road to get back out onto the track himself. Phil Jocelyn, though, I mean, that car looks as though it is an absolute handful to drive ever since that incident with him earlier on.
Oh, yeah.
In some ways, I'm a little bit surprised that he's not been given a call from race control to say calm it down or bring it back down to pit road.
Yeah, there's no way he can. He's keeping up a race pace. The whole rear, left rear of the car is caved in. His wings looks like origami. So there's no way that car's handling or even up to speed. So yeah, you're right. I'm surprised race control hasn't waved him off the track at this point in time. Really loose in the rear car because of that aerodynamic damage.
Just to let you know, Kitty Armstrong is still your race leader, despite the fact he's made himself a pit stop. Scott Ford is a full still, wait for it, 3 seconds behind him. So Kitty Armstrong did an entire pit stop, came back out, and is ahead of Scott Ford. However, when you consider the fact that Rosselli is closing, this will be good news for Rosselli. It looks like he should get a 2nd position, unless he has to make his passing dash at the end.
Well, yeah, that's just what you're looking at, because you just saw after that pit stop, you've got a 3-way race instead of just a 1-way race. 3 seconds is not that far, but of course Kitty Engstrom has been running some really strong lap times, so we'll see if Scott Ford can, put together enough laps to give him some kind of competition. But it is definitely Anthony Rosselli hard charging, trying to get up to find Scott Ford. So I anticipate a pretty good battle because both those guys are running similar lap times.
And of course, Erkstrom probably will carry on ahead of this. Scott Ford, however, needs to pit. Just having a look at Rosselli's lap when he, came to pit road, when he had to get his toe. That was lap 19. Oh god, down to the inside at the very last moment over Jocelyn. So that was lap number 19. So what, 50 laps ago, which equates to about, we're talking about 45 minutes ago. So if he does need to come into pit, it's going to have to be a very short flat and dash, no tyres. He'll be on pit road itself. Well, he'll be in the pit box about 5 seconds. He'll be on pit road for about 25 seconds. So Rosselli, I just think that, you know, if anything, he needs to perhaps maybe save a little bit of fuel, if anything. But that's like telling someone who's trying to close down another driver to go slow, and it never works.
Yeah, he's definitely not going to go slow. He can sell second place from here. We're talking about 4-second lead, 4 seconds behind Scott Ford, so he's made up some time already. Got a Mustang off the course there. He's made up quite a bit of time already, so he's going to charge. He wants to put that. Wants to see if he's got anything for Scott Ford here.
So we are approaching 1 hour into this 90-minute race. Your race leader is still Kitty Armstrong in the number 3 machine. Scott Ford is currently sat 5.8 seconds behind him in the second position, but he needs to come down toward pit road to get himself some service. Anthony Rosselli in the 3rd position, 10 seconds behind the race leader, and doesn't need, we think, to pit again. So this could be interesting towards the end of the race. Sergei Silotov in 4th, William Green in 5th, Stephen Granger in 6th, and Bacteria in 7th, and Richie Raffa in the 8th spot. They are your top 8 of your DP drivers. And then in the Mustangs, it is Nick Brennan from Carl Young, Patrick Berry in 4th, Roman Luzanov, Thibaut Bienjek, Chris Brown, Tom Kotarski, and Chuck Johnson, who, let's say, was in 2nd position earlier on this race. He's all the way down now in the 8th spot. Really is suffering. And we have to say, we haven't talked about the Mustangs. This happens so often this much, but they really have just spread themselves out. Well, you know, each driver's got themselves, what, 5-6 seconds at least between the car ahead and behind them.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's pretty hard. You know, this is an interesting series, especially for a Mustang driver. You know, it's very hard to actually really race, you know, unless you can just get lucky enough to stay with the person, because once that gap ensues and the pit stops come in, and like I say, you're under constant attack on this particular race course by the DPs. So, and sometimes they're coming in clusters, so they're, you know, you're getting passed by 1, 2, 3 cars at a time. So it can really put you off your race pace. So it's a wonder there's a big gap, you know. It's just unfortunate for Chuck Johnson, though, that he can't get up there and give a race to Nick Brennan and try to get, because we've seen that before. Even though with everything that's going on, we've seen some pretty epic races going on in the Mustang class in this particular series.
Yeah, Doyle, we're going to have to back to our DPs momentarily because Anthony Rosselli has caught Scott Ford. This is about for 2nd position in class. They are out 8 seconds behind Kitty Armstrong, your race leader, just navigating themselves around a ton of traffic. They've got a little bit more to do. You saw that Anthony Rosselli trying to do the same tactic once again. Trying to do the boxing in tactic. Didn't quite work that time. Wasn't quite close enough. But Rosselli thinking his way through this race, and he is hopefully still going to be within that kind of 8.5 second window because he doesn't want to start losing time. He's lost himself about 7 down to the
inside. That was a risky move. What does that do to... Oh.
And I think
Scott Ford gets pushed right outside there. What an aggressive move by Anthony Rosselli. Wow.
And I think Ford just like, okay, take the position. If we're carrying like this, we're just going to lose any form of time we have left. One of the interesting things is, though, is that you saw how Rosselli got held up dramatically there, but both those drivers did. In fact, Rosselli's still being held up a little bit by Ali Bacteri and Wolfgang Wildenhall ahead of him, both multiple laps down. Rosselli really needs to push at this point in the race, and he cannot do anything. He's going to have to try and get them off the final corner, but with those two drafting, it has been so difficult for Rosselli to find a way past. Finally, he does so. But again, he lost himself another couple of seconds to Kitty Armstrong, and that's not what he needs towards the end of this race. He's got himself half an hour to close down that number 3 machine, and we've talked about how he can do it when they're both in clean air, but Armstrong in traffic looks so he's either the better or the luckier driver right now.
Well, yeah, and that was just actually kind of amazing to me. I was a bit surprised by that because Scott Ford and Anthony Rosselli have been running. You see Rosselli getting a little wide there. Have been running similar lap times, and Rosselli was just like, okay, it's like there was an extra gear. He just took off, shot down the inside, made the pass. And Scott Ford is actually falling back, so that was quite interesting. It's like so he kind of took the wind out of Scott Ford's sail right there. It made it look easy.
Yeah, I'm debating to see how long Scott Ford can actually last on this tank of fuel. And we have seen drivers go for, hour, 15 minutes, but when you consider the fact that, this track, as we talked about, the last 2/3 of the lap, you're on the throttle for about 78% of the time, you're going to have to make at least one stop here, surely.
Well, and that's, and you can see his car is probably starting to get a little bit loose and not handling really well because he doesn't have the fuel in the tank to kind of plant the car. It's kind of throwing it off balance, and it seems like he's kind of getting a little overdrive on the vehicle there. But definitely, Anthony Rosselli pulling away. I'm just actually kind of amazed by that. You're right. If Ford has to right here and Anthony Rosselli stays out on the track, then Scott Ford is no longer an issue.
And it looks though that Rosselli, I think he can close it down. It's going to be very, very close though. Very close.
Yeah, 7 seconds, and I mean we've seen Anthony Rosselli. I mean we've seen this other kind of racing before, but he is really, really charging. Look at the lap time here. Last lap, Kitty Engstrom, 47.9. Anthony Rosselli, 45.6.
46.2 is off the line again, still faster by about a second. The gap is now down to 6 seconds between those two drivers. Armstrong has had the traffic. You can see there the kind of jam that was going on ahead of him. Sorry, ahead of Rosselli. But, I mean, you've got Steve Goringer, Jason Donington, and Thibaut Bienjak, who Rosselli's trying to find his way past. He's got his way past Bienjak easily enough. Jason Donington, however, and Steve Goringer are pretty much battling for some form of position on the racetrack, even though Donington is a full 13 laps behind Goringer at the moment.
Yeah, and no matter how you slice it, if Anthony Rosselli continues to drive like he's driving, and he actually does take the checkered flag and has no mishaps, you have to really, I'm now down, gap down to 5 seconds. You really have to hand him because he is absolutely, I mean, what a wonderful job of racing this car today. I mean, he is really making this car move. And Kitty Engstrom is no pressure most of the race. Now, whose pit crew is yelling, Rosselli's coming now. I mean, it's Kitty Engstrom's like, wow, this guy may have a chance to catch me.
And he just did a big manoeuvre there down the inside of the number 22 machine of Steve Goringer. And now he's just trying to find his way past Jason Donington and past Patrick Bieri in the number 14 machine, who is of course in the Mustang. Bieri never seemed to recover from that moment he had off track down in turn number 1 and 2 about 25 laps ago now, Doc, and he really has fallen back behind Carl Young. You talk about momentum, it seems as though it just all went wrong for Carl Young after not for Carl Young, sorry, after for Patrick Bieri after he went off track there.
Yeah, and that can really do it for you because you know even the slightest bit of damage, but then your rhythm's gone. Sometimes your confidence kind of goes. I mean, your race fall apart really quickly, depending on the type of events that. Oh, you see, Anthony Rosselli getting a little air there, but yeah, it can really go bad really quick.
And we've still got ourselves 25 minutes left of racing here in the final round of the iRacing Grand Am Premier Series, brought to you by GlacierTV. And Doyle, it's going to be it's been an incredible season here in the series. The merge is not going to affect, any more real racing between LMS and Grand Am next season. So, I mean, as we look forward to next year, I mean, guessing quite simply, we're looking for more of the same, really, aren't we?
Yeah, I think you can expect a really exciting series. You know, when you first hear about it, you know, you think, oh, geez, the DPs and the Mustangs. You know, how can you possibly have a bigger mismatch than that? This racing is actually really exciting. It's much better than if it was just the DPs or just the Mustangs. It adds an element to the racing that is just kind of that danger element that you know, it's really exciting. So it's drawing a lot more people to this type of racing.
It really is like the kamikaze style of multi-class racing. It is really intense from start to finish. And one thing you do notice that drivers, you know, despite the fact that there's a huge speed differential, you have a car going off track. That is Kitty Armstrong. And
Kitty
all
Armstrong,
of a sudden,
and there's Anthony Rosselli, and there. Oh my God, you need to replay on that.
And
Oh, what of a bit.
Anthony Rosselli straight to the race lead there as Kitty Armstrong. We're going to count to get ourselves a replay of that. It was down in turn number 2. He just dove down to the inside of one of the Mustangs. The car just snapped to the right on him.
Snap loose. Oh.
And he had to go all the way around the long round there. And then, say, Anthony Rosselli got past, but then in turn, he had to slow right down to avoid running over Roman Luzanov, and big action there in the space of about 25 seconds.
Yeah, what a big break for Anthony Rosselli. I mean, we talked about it earlier. I mean, you can lead the race forever if you want. What happens towards the end of the race is, you know, what's going to decide it. And that was just a bit of a mistake. Again, you know, probably nerves. He hasn't been under pressure this entire race, and now Anthony Rosselli's charging up on him. It's a slight mistake. It's a little loose in the rear of the car. He opts to pull it off the track and take the easy way, so he won't do any damage. But in turn, now he's having to charge to get his lead back. So this is definitely going to be interesting to see whether he can get up on the wheel enough to give Anthony Rosselli now a run for his money.
So is Anthony Rosselli your race leader after coming all the way through the field after a big mishap about 50 laps ago. Kitty Armstrong in the second position, Scott Ford in third, Sergio Solotov and William Green running out your top 5 in the DP field. In the Mustangs, it is Nick Brennan from Carl Young, Patrick Bieri, and then Roman Luzanov. I need some water, so we'll be back in just a matter of moments.
Yeah, and I'm looking right now on board with Kitty Engstrom and looking to see how that battle's going to shape out. Lap around is 2.9 seconds is the gap, so I'm really looking forward to seeing these two nose tail. He's lost quite a bit of time, 4.5 seconds back now on Anthony Rosselli. Anthony Rosselli just is, man, he's just a man on a mission. What a monster out there on the track. Oh, Kitty Engstrom still having trouble on turn 2. I don't know if he's going to have to pit, or, you know, he already pitted, so I don't know why his car is getting so loose. Probably heated up his tires, but that's not going to help close the gap on Anthony Rosselli. Yeah, what an unfortunate turn of events there. You look back, Scott Ford still bringing you up third place, a full 12 seconds behind your race leader. Scott Ford had really done a good job of hanging on to that second place, but when he got into third place, it's just kind of slowed down, and looks to me like you've got Kitty Engstrom is kind of overdriving his car now, trying to get back up there to give some to Anthony Rosselli, and it's just not happening for him. He just seems to be overdriving the car. It's easy to say for Booth, but he just needs to relax and just continue to run those laps that he's always run. So looking down to your... Go ahead, Will.
No, you can talk coherently.
No, I get to talk for a minute? No, Nick Brennan is still your race leader in Mustangs. Kyle Young bring up second place. Patrick Bieri in third place. Roman Lazanev in fourth place. Chris Brown would be your top 5 of the Mustang class. Not a whole lot of Mustangs in this race today, and certainly not a whole left, and that's unfortunate. You always like to see that. And for me, for this series, I really would like to see more Mustang drivers attempt this car, more people get here and give this type of racing a chance.
It looks like Kitty Armstrong, as he's just saying, ever since that moment, he is just been really overworking all of that car. We'll try and go on board with him in a moment, but really, you just saw as he came up the hill, you know, struggling to get past to find a gap that 10 laps ago he would have found a way to breeze past, and you know that gap's now up to 8 seconds between himself and Anthony Maselli. He's got Phil Jocelyn ahead of him who he needs to put a lap on. You know, that's not going to be too much hard work for him. But Anthony Maselli is now up to 11 seconds, and from a lap and a half down, Anthony Maselli all of a sudden is dominating this race again.
Yeah, and if you're Kitty Engstrom, we can't know what's around our heads up here in the booth, but it just kind of seems that that mistake has affected him, and he hasn't mentally. Doesn't seem like he's mentally. Doesn't seem like he's mentally recovered from what happened there. One of the things to know there, if you're on board with that. Oh no! Come on.
Come on! It's our last race of the series. You're not letting me talk again. Just like
Whatever.
Kitty Armstrong there, we're talking about how obviously Jocelyn should have been easy, made it look very difficult. Jocelyn there, in at the number 7 machine, just Kitty Armstrong, just at the very last minute decided to dive down to the left. Jocelyn saw him coming at the very last second, had to turn back to the right. Armstrong there really had a heart attack moment in that number 3 machine.
Oh, yeah, I'll jump in. Okay. Now, one of the things, if we're on board with the number 3 car, Kenny, so if you look as you come up over that turn where that elevation changes, one of the things to note, I don't know if anybody's noticing that, and maybe some people have run this track, but there's a moment you come up over there, there's in the back of the car, sometimes even the front of the car, gets airborne. If you do not take that corner square when you're coming up to the top of that hill, if you're slightly angled and you're slightly turned, we'll send that car off to the right or off to the left in a heartbeat. You have to be absolutely certain because the car does leave the ground or close to leave the ground every time it comes up over that hill.
And completely agree. You know, we've had 2 drivers already fall into the wall of tyre barriers on the left and the right hand side that lie on the track just waiting for you to pounce. In fact, it's Armco on the left hand side if you don't go too far down the straightaway, but really, you know, you have to be careful coming up that corner, and that's the thing of this racetrack. You know, if you look at it flat, you're thinking, what the hell is this? You're going to be racing 90 minutes in pretty much a hexagon which had its bottom fall apart. But you know, once you get into understanding the track, the elevation changes, the height differentials, the technicalities of it, all the way down to turn number 1, you know, it's almost like Watkins Glen down at the boot section. You really want to run that kind of concrete strip that runs down the centre of the racetrack.
Yeah, you definitely have it. That corner is a lot more than looks. I mean, it looks like a simple 180, nice gradual curve, but the way there is some slight banking to the pavement there, you have to be in the right groove, otherwise you will find yourself flopping off the back of the turn and into the grass. Interestingly enough, it looks to me like Scott Ford has managed to get only about a 5. He dropped back. It looked he was going to try to mount a charge on Kitty Engstrom, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to do that. He had a couple of good laps, and it looks like he was going to try to make a move, but it doesn't appear so.
And of course, we've only got ourselves 15 minutes after racing to go, so, and we still haven't seen Scott Ford down towards pit road, unless I really am mistaken. Scott Ford hasn't made that journey down towards pit road at all, so perhaps he's just trying to save himself a bit of fuel. It'll be interesting to see whether he does do anything in these last couple of laps, or whether he does decide 96 laps after starting this race he is going to make that trip down towards pit road and just get a splash of fuel.
Well, then you have to wonder if Scott Ford does have to pit at this point in time. Does that play into Sergey's, plan? Because he's only a lap down there, so there's a possibility, depending on the distance between these 2 drivers, that Scott Ford, if he doesn't have a stellar pit stop, could be a problem.
Yeah, it's going to be close. It's going to be close. I think Sergey's a little bit too far back though for it really to work. It's going to be really oof. If he pits, remembering he doesn't have to take much fuel either, he should get out in front. It'll be close, but he should get about a 5-6 second buffer, unless he speeds, of course.
So if you're Scott, is that what you do? You just wait it out, kind of dive into the pits, get a splash of fuel, jump out, and hey, I'm good for third place. You know, my day's good. I'm getting paid.
Well, with 12 minutes left of the race, pretty much 12, 13 minutes, you know, that's what I do. It's like, wait until you have to pit, if you're going to pit, and do it that way. I mean, he's in a position now, he has boxed himself in by doing this strategy, that if he pits now, he'll probably lose a lot more time. He's going to have to try and make this work, and if it doesn't work, then he's going to have to think about it. You know, if he's a lap short now, I'd be like, well, pound it to the floor, try and gain some of that time back. Because it looks as though he's still running about a second off the pace, and you look at his entry into 6, really isn't looking overly committed at the minute. He's definitely trying to save a bit of time.
Yeah, you know that. So that, you know, that this could be decided depending on if we have any more, you know, mix-ups. And Anthony Rosselli, like we said before, up front, dominating just exactly the way Kitty Engstrom was. But then again, we still have a few laps left. You know, and also I want to take a look back over at the Mustangs and Nick Brennan, and what a great race he's been running today. I mean, he's 2 laps ahead of his nearest person in the field. You know, Kyle Young, the number 15 car back there, and you know, he's got coming around on there. So if he can run his race, he's been stellar all day long today. I mean, it's a clean car, and he's running some very consistent laps. You know, he's very, very experienced driver. So you know, my hat is off to Nick Brennan and for, you know, kind of figuring out the right way to run, you know, here at Lamrock Park.
And let's not forget, you know, there were some superb performances at the start of this race. Chuck Johnson, again, comes back into mind, but as we always say, you know, to be in the shot of, you know, getting praise at the end of the race and perhaps seeing the checkered flag, you're gonna have to, at the start of it, really pay attention. And even though it was not Chuck Johnson's fault at all, you can't, you know, be going for anything at the end of the race if you're not there in the middle.
Well, yeah, and that's definitely Chuck Johnson. Like I say, that was a bad situation for him. I mean, he was running his line, he was doing what he should have been doing, and he unnecessarily was taken out of this race. You know, but that's racing. That's what happens. Things happen. You know, hopefully, you know, it's not going to, you know, it does affect him in the point standings, but you know, he's definitely going to be disappointed on this. But you know, there's nothing you can do now. I mean, you know, it is over.
So we're approaching now the final laps here at Limerick Park, the final round of the Grand Am Premier Series. Been brought to you all season long by GlacierTV. Anthony Rosselli pretty much trying to cement his championship here in the Grand Am Premier Series. Is leading the way now by 16 seconds over Kitty Armstrong. Let's not forget, Rosselli keeping a close eye on his pit crew, just in case he does need to come down towards the pit road. But, you know, if Scott Ford's done 101 laps in the tank, Rosselli really mustn't be tapping those dials too much. Sergio Solotov in 4th, William Green in 5th. But, I mean, 6th with Steve Granger, 7th with Ali Bakhtiri. They've had good races all day long. And, I mean, Phil Jocelyn, you know, he's driving a damaged race car, but at the start of the race, he was there about it as well. So it's been a very competitive field. I think the close proximity of racing and the narrowness of this track has kind of taken its toll in these as we're approaching these last laps.
Yeah, I think so. That's one of the things you got to look at. You see Anthony Rosselli, who artfully seems to be able to make the track 2 or 3 lanes wider than it really is. But then, you know, a lot of people, you know, you've got to be very careful on this track. You can't being over aggressive early in the race and before you really have the lines down and where, you know, before you really understand where the Mustangs are going to be running. It probably ends up ruining your day. And this is one of those tracks where you really have to understand it before you can take those, make those moves that could put you into the, you know, where are you going to go into the tire barriers? What are the Mustangs? Are they going to drift out on the corners? And all those things are important. And I think it goes to the patient racer that end up coming to the checkered flag first on a race course like this.
And you talk about pace racing, you talk about, you know, thinking and close racing. You're going to love this dog. In 2 weeks' time, the iRacing World Tour moves on to its next event there for the Talladega 500 Showdown. So that'll take place on October the 6th in Doyle. Everything we talked about here, Now just imagine that at 195 miles an hour with cars left, right, forward, backwards of you. Pretty much as Scott Ford has come down to pit road, he has come down to pit road, so Rosselli still won't be sweating too much in his car, because he's got, what, a full 15-16 laps advantage over that. But now we're going to have to keep an eye on Solotov. We'll come back to Talladega in a minute, shall we?
Yeah, and he come. I think you're right. I think Sergei Solotov just too far behind him, unless Scott Ford does something really silly in his pit box, which he did not. So that's going to be okay for Scott Ford. I think unless something happens, he's looking at his podium. He's getting his check today.
Yeah, and Scott Ford still comes out on the lead lap by the look of it. Just kind of see where Rosselli is in relation to Scott Ford. And car off track there, and that was Phil Jocelyn deciding to see where he wanted to put his car next onto the track. I had a feeling that he was going to try and go up the hill and play hide and seek, but back onto the racetrack, no harm, no foul there. Rosselli did indeed put a lap on Scott Ford, so it's just Anthony Rosselli and Kitty Armstrong, the drivers on the league lap in the DP class, and of course it's only Nick Brennan, the driver who on the league lap in the Mustangs. So Doyle, Talladega, 2 weeks time, let's get back to it. It's exactly the same as this, just faster, and a lot of the same rules apply, it's almost a lot more slowed down. The way you have to think your way through things here, you know, you can't do a big bold maneuver. You're gonna have to think your way through the 188 laps there.
Yeah, that's part of the situation with this type of racing. It's not just hammer down and steer the car. In a race like you're talking about in a couple of weeks, it's definitely going to be thinking those races. How well do you strategize? How well do you plan? How do you set up your opponents for the turns? Because being overly aggressive too early, or just being sloppy on the racetrack is definitely going to that's not going to well for you.
And so that will be October the 6th here on Glacier TV, bringing you the remainder of the iRacing World Tour. Next time you get to see some multi-class action will be in the Petit Le Mans. Which will occur, if I'm correctly thinking, at Road Atlanta, and that will occur on the 21st of October. That's at Road Atlanta indeed, with the Corvette, the Ford GT, and the Honda Le Mans style car thing, the HPD.
Le Mans style cars.
Honda Performance Development, that ARX, that's the one I was thinking of, yeah, and I went blank. Shut up.
Nice. You studied that car quite a bit. Yeah, I actually think that's gonna be a great race. Getting there with the HPD, with the Ford GT, and you've got two cars that are somewhat similar, and then one that is completely different.
But it doesn't like the bumps. It doesn't like the bumps at Red Bull.
No, it doesn't like the bumps. I mean, well, you've also got something too with HPD is extremely an aero car. Relies 100% on its aerodynamics and the aero downforce in order to get the car through the turn. So and then you've got the Vet, which is not aero at all, 100% mechanical, and then you've got the Ford GT that's a little both. So that's going to be some interesting racing. 3 cars out there, 3 different styles of racing, 3 different speeds, 3 different cornering abilities. So that should be excitement at its best. Edge of your seat, sir. Edge of your seat.
You know that I know that track pretty much off by heart, yet I've never driven a lap there.
Well, that's not a surprise. I mean, it's considering it's the HPD thingy. So
Whatever. And once again, it's time for the Will Vincent and Doyle Johnson show as we're approaching the final couple of laps here at Lime Rock Park. See the clock on the right hand side of your screen is getting close to its end there. See Phil Jocelyn still going around in that car. Some of you have been looking at him the last couple of laps. Just check in momentarily on the Mustang. Still nothing going on, but you see Patrick Bieri started to close that gap back down to Carl Young. And even though we've got ourselves less than 10 minutes to go, pretty much about 5 minutes left to go, Bieri's still putting the pressure on just to try and see whether or not he can force car ahead of him to a mistake. And that's the sort of thing that even towards the end of these races you want to do, just try and get the driver ahead of you to make a mistake, as the fatigue's already sat in with what, an hour and 27 minutes of racing already gone.
Yeah, you're going to start to see your reaction time slowing down, and you're braking, get a little sloppy, and things are happening, and you're looking at Patrick Bieri and Kyle Young, of course, Patrick Bieri, you can see Kyle Young. You can see him right there. He's right there. At no point in time does he ever leave his front windshield. So the question is it going to is he going to start overdriving the car, or is he going to keep up there? Because, you know, oh, it's a mistake right there coming out of the corner. So, but, you know, that's the thing is, can he track down Kyle Young? I mean, he technically has enough time, but we'll see.
Technically, yeah. I mean, just depending on the way it is, we've got ourselves 3, maybe 4 laps left to go. I mean, it's going to be close to the way start-finish line happens here. I did a race and it was literally 2 seconds difference. It's always like, just come on, stand on the brake. You don't need to do another lap. But these drivers will do the other lap because they're racers and that's what they like doing, racing. 2 minutes left to go now here at Lime Rock Park in the closing stages of the race. Of course, it is Anthony Rosselli, your race leader. For those of you who are just joining and thinking, oh my god, it's Anthony Rosselli out front again, isn't this a surprise? He has come all the way from being at 1 lap down. He had a big moment on lap number 19, stalled the car, had to get it towed all the way back down towards pit road. That cost him a lap and a half. He has fought his way through the field, got himself back out front after Kitty Armstrong had a huge moment. And in some ways, Doyle, I feel a little bit robbed there of what would have been an interesting battle between these two drivers. But Anthony Rosselli, I mean, the stats going to read the fact he won this race and he dominated, but it's not going to take, you know, not going to give him the due credit for what he's deserved in this race.
Well, no, and then the question is, judging the fact that he went from 0, you know, to 15 seconds, you wonder how long that battle between Anthony Rosselli and Kitty Engstrom would have actually lasted. Because once Anthony Rosselli got past and he saw, you know, clean air in the number 1, you know, and how his going through here in first place, and he was gone. So, was Kitty Engstrom actually ever faster than Anthony Rosselli? And it doesn't appear so.
Well, no, but let's not forget, at the start of the run he was faster, but the traffic worked his way, and it always seems to be the first driver, you know, the car on the number 1 side is always the one that people, when they hear on the ears, the leaders behind you, you're going to get out of the way a lot more than second place is coming up behind you. Always, I mean, I don't know what it is, it's just human instinct, you always come up a lot more. Just having a look at the clock is about to run out if it's not already done so. We're going to pretty much get the white flag this time by Anthony Rosselli back out in front here. He is going to come past the start-finish line to take the white flag. And you just have a look at the clock. It is running out just as he passes the line there. So, again, Rosselli could have just got onto the brakes, come out the final corner, won this race and gone home. But look, racers be racers. They want to race it, Doyle.
Yeah, they sure do. They'll go ahead and take that extra lap there. They're going to go around one more time, and you see that. So, you know, congratulations. You know, if you can get around that one time. So a lot of good.
I tell you what, could you imagine what would go through Rosselli's mind if he was to crash right now after making that conscious decision to do the final lap? However, it looks as though he is going to come home and drive. It has been a championship performance here for Anthony Rosselli, who not only is going to win the race, he's going to win the 2nd annual Grand Am Premier Series title. Anthony Rosselli, your race winner, your championship winner. And Rosselli, sterling drive there in that number 1 Radical Steel Series machine, taking home the title for the Radical drivers. We are waiting now for Nick Brennan. He's coming out of the final corner for the final time. A determined, sterling effort by him, over a lap ahead of every other driver here today. But he's going to take home race victory in the Mustangs, and a great drive there by Nick Brennan.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to come across there. Congratulations to Anthony Rosselli, not only on the win to the championship. Good job to Nick Brennan, and of course, Kitty Engstrom will run a great race. Scott Ford, Jay Saltoff, and William Green all doing your top 5 in the TP division. You know, great race for everybody. It was quite exciting. This kind of racetrack is always good racing, especially for spectators, because of the, like you said, the 2 types of tracks. So great race today.
And while Doyle runs away and tells everyone where to go to have for interviews, Doyle, have you got your sign ready to give people interview directions?
Yeah, stand outside and wave them in.
So, you know what, Doyle? We'll let you do the race results. You never get the chance to do it. I'll let you do the grid at Indy, so now you can do the results as well. You know, end of season present.
I don't know. Well, it's kind of, it's always it's just an honor. I mean, if you're passing that torch to do this instead of Will, but all right, we'll start out with your DP division. Anthony Rosselli coming home in first place, number 1 machine. The number 3 car, Kitty Engstrom, second place. Scott Ford, number 12 car, rounding out your podium. In fourth place, Sergey Soldatov will be number 4. 18 car of William Green will round out your top 5. Steve Gronega, position number 6. Ali Bakhtari, number 7. Number 8, car number 7, Phil Jocelyn. Position number 9, car number 4, Jason Dunnington. Position number 10, car number 16, Wolfgang Holdener. Sorry for the mispronunciations there. Next would be Fabrizio Raffia, car number 8, Antonio Arcadecano, car number 13, Matthew Burrows, and then coming down, we've got Adrius Valentinius, Billy Bailey, and Jean-Marc Brunet in rounding out your DP field. Going up to your Mustang, Nick Brennan in first place. Kyle Young will be taking second. Patrick Borelli will round out your podium. Roman Lozanov will be position number 4. Chris Brown, position number 5.
He stopped. He just stopped.
With Tom Konoskov and rounds up your number 6, Chuck Johnson. Tragic day for him. He'll be rounding out last place in the Mustang.
We apologise there. Doyle just had a freeze when he saw Phil back behind Jack. He's like, what? Huh? And then he has to go at me all the time. But Doyle,
I was getting some chatter from back in the booth that distracted me.
Yeah. It's like that time when we get the idiot board out. We're really in phonetics, but it's been a great season here in the Grand Am Premier Series. I mean, it's been some very fast racing, and personally, you know, Watkins Glen, the classic layout, the speed of that track, you know, will probably be my standout moment of the year. But give me a drive of the race, give me a drive of the season, give me a race of the season.
Well, I'm probably not qualified to give any of those, but obviously the driver of the race for me has to be Anthony Rosselli in the DP division. From the start all the way going to the back of the field and back up to the front of the field, that was an awesome performance by him, a great display of driving, great passes, some serious skill coming out, you know, on the track for Anthony Rosselli. And then, of course, for me, driver of the race, I think that, and I'm going to give this to him because I feel so bad for what happened to him. Chuck Johnson, who was definitely the only one that had a chance to mount a charge on Nick Brennan, was taken out of the race prematurely and unable to continue. But Nick Brennan, great win for him, but Chuck Johnson's my guy.
And so, to run through your championship standings, we're trying to get an update on them as we speak. We've got people there with doing things. It does look as though the gap between Anthony Rosselli and Jalopino is going to be stood at over 300 points, so we can pretty much, barring any miracles, confirm Anthony Rosselli as your Grand Am Premier Series driver for 2012. Jalopino looks as though he's going to take second position, although there's a slight chance that Blake Townend could take that second spot, but 220 points, he's going to need Blake Townend. It's all going to be on the line for him.
Yeah, it's been a really great season too, Will. This is, like you say, a lot of exciting racing. Hopefully, Nick, you know, I'd really like to see it. You know, shout out to everybody out there that driving a Mustang at this point in time. This is a great series for you to get into. I'd really like to see a lot more competition in the Mustang class for next season.
And I think that, you know, when we put it all together, there's been some standout performances all year long. So my race of the year will probably go out to be Watkins Glen the Classic, just because the sheer speed of that thing was absolutely bananas. Driver of the race has got to be Rosselli, simply put. My driver of the season, however, I'm gonna have to step aside from the DPs and give it to Geelink Dave Geelink in the Mustangs, because, you know, when you consider the gap he has over everyone else, you know, pretty much 400 points, when he's just talked about how he's just been on it all season. Let's not forget, he has other commitments as well. He races in the iRacing.com Drivers World Championship on the roadside. So he races the Grand Prix series there all pretty much every other week, and he's been on it there as well. So he's going to be my driver of the season, with possibly Blake Town then in second for all the reasons listed above.
Yeah, all great drivers, and definitely a great season. And as you mentioned, the race at Watkins Glen, definitely one for the books.
So that concludes our broadcast here, and it concludes our season of the iRacing.com Grand Am online sports car series, Premier Series even, presented to you by GlacierTV. Mr. Doyle Johnson, thank you very much for being my partner here today, and for all the other times that you stepped in and helped this season.
No problem, and good race everybody, and everybody have a good afternoon.
Yep, for myself, Doyle Johnson, Jan MSK, and everyone at GlacierTV, we'll see you next season. Bye-bye.